Hello everyone, welcome to the class of Modern Indian History. I'm Dr. Shareena Jasmin, and in today's class we are going to explore the topic the British expansion, Mysore, Maratha and the Sikh Wars. So in our today's class we'll talk about how the British East India Company expanded their political power over India and how did they establish their grip and control over the Indian regional kingdoms such as Mysore, Maratha and the Punjab. So let's get into the topic. Before moving on to the case studies, that is Mysore, Maratha as well as the Punjab, let's understand the background in which the English East India Company expanded their political power over India. In our previous videos also, we have discussed that English East India Company came to India for trading purpose. However, gradually they expanded their political power and company became a territorial power in India gradually. So we need to understand the context or the background in which how did the company maximize their political control over India. For that, we need to understand the decline of Mughal authority. We mentioned that in our videos on Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar, etc. We have already given this background. How did the decline of Mughal authority resulted in the political maximization of power as far as English East India Company is concerned? Now, the decline of Mughal authority or Mughal power during the first half of 18th century, especially after the death of Aurangzeb in the year 1707, created a political vacuum in the context of India. So this political vacuum was exploited by the European powers in India, particularly the English East India Company. Out of this political vacuum, there emerged a number of regional powers in the context of India. So the company, English East India Company, wanted to establish their grip and control over these regional powers also. For that purpose, they maintained a number of diplomatic techniques, including maintaining friendship and alliances with the regional kingdoms of India. And they were also not hesitant to launch war against these regional kingdoms whenever it is necessary. So there are a number of diplomatic measures which was followed by the English East India Company to defeat or to control the regional kingdoms of India. We are moving on to our case studies. Let's start with the case of Mysore. Before moving on to the 4 Anglo-Mysore wars that we have to discuss, we just wanted to understand the rise of Mysore as one of the most important regional kingdom of South India. So, Mysore was a very powerful kingdom of South India and moreover, it occupied a strategic location. So, strategic location in the sense, Mysore had control over vast, fertile agricultural lands. It also controlled the maritime ports of western coast of India. Moreover, it had access to Malabar coastal region. We know that Malabar coast is very famous, popular for the spice trade. The trade of cardamom, cinnamon, pepper, etc. took place in the Malabar coastal region, which was highly profitable as far as European markets are concerned. Since Mysore is occupying this kind of a strategic location, they had geographical advantages, they had military advantages, and they were also economically rich. The real architect behind the rise of Mysore was Hyder Ali. Even though he was not born into a royal family, because of his diplomatic skills and military skills, he became the ruler of Mysore in the year 1761. And he was a ruler who tried to modernize the administration of Mysore. He introduced a number of administrative reforms. After the death of Hyder Ali in the year 1782, his son Tipu Sultan, often recognized as the Tiger of Mysore, came into power. Tipu also followed the line of his father and he also introduced a number of administrative reforms, including land revenue reforms. Tipu, as a ruler, tried to modernize the army of Mysore. For that, he expanded the artillery power of Mysore. Moreover, he was the one who introduced iron-cased military technology or iron-cased rockets. And these iron-cased rockets later influenced the British military technology also. So we can consider him as one of the most modern rulers of his time. So Mysore can be considered as a political kingdom or a regional kingdom of South India, which is powerful in terms of their economy, military. They also had a clear-cut diplomatic skills. Now we can talk about the cause of the Anglo-Mysore Wars. I already mentioned that there were 4 Anglo-Mysore Wars and there are multiple set of reasons for these Anglo-Mysore Wars. Let's start by our first reason. British expansion in South India. We saw that with the Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar, the British themselves established in the context of North India. They became the political masters of North India, especially after the Battle of Buxar. English East India Company got Diwani right in the year 1765. We already discussed that with this Diwani right, company got the right to collect revenue from Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. So this economic power helped the company to navigate their political challenges also in North India. Now, company is gradually expanding their power into the South India, and Mysore remains one of the biggest obstacle as far as their expansion is concerned. So the British expansion and their imperial ambitions to expand their power to South India is one of the most important reasons for the Anglo-Mysore Wars. The second reason is Mysore alliance with the French. Mysore rulers, including Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, tried to maintain their friendship with French East India Company. We know that English as well as the French, they were global rivals. They were rivals in the European context, and this rivalry also reflected in the context of India. So, as far as English East India Company is concerned, they had greater anxiety and tension because Mysore is making friendship with French East India Company. They are seeking the French assistance in modernizing their military, in seeking their military technology of the French East India Company, etc. So, they just wanted to stop this friendship and wanted to subdue the regional power of Mysore. Coming to the third reason, control over rich spice and trade routes. We mentioned that Mysore as a regional kingdom occupied the strategic location of South India. It had access to a number of fertile agricultural lands. It also had access to trade, maritime ports, etc. I already mentioned that they had control over the Malabar coastal region, which was an important hub of the spice trade. So, if company could defeat Mysore, they will get a share of this rich spice trade. That was the third reason. Coming to the fourth reason, British fear of Tipu Sultan's growing power. Tipu was a ruler with military skills as well as diplomatic vision. As I mentioned earlier, he was one of the most modern ruler of his time. So company wanted to subdue Tipu Sultan. So all these reasons finally resulted in the culmination of 4 Anglo-Mysore Wars. Now let's talk about these Anglo-Mysore Wars one by one. Let's start with the first Anglo-Mysore War, which was fought between 1767 to 1769. So this war was fought during the time of Hyder Ali. During this war occurred, English East India Company made friendship alliance with two powers, the Nizam of Hyderabad as well as the Marathas. So there is a triple alliance. The company established alliance with Nizam as well as the Marathas. Now what happened is that Hyder Ali was so diplomatic, he was so militarily skilled, and that's why he could broke this alliance by separately negotiating with the Nizam of Hyderabad. One of the dramatic events of the first Anglo-Mysore War was that Hyder Ali could march easily, advance easily towards Mysore. Not Mysore, Madras. Madras was considered as the capital of English East India Company as far as South India is concerned. So, by watching the military techniques, the military strategy as well as the diplomatic skills of Hyder Ali, the English East India Company became shocked and they had no other option except to make an agreement with Hyder Ali, and that finally resulted in the Treaty of Madras in the year 1769. So, the first Anglo-Mysore War came to an end with the Treaty of Madras in the year 1769. As far as this treaty is concerned, both powers decided to restore the territories they were captured. Since neither side gained territory, it was often described as a status quo. And moreover, based on the Treaty of Madras, both these powers, which means the Mysore as well as the English East India Company, they decided to protect each other if a third power attacks them. So that is how the first Anglo-Mysore War became entered. Now let's talk about the second war, which took place between 1780 to 1784. So what happened is that we discussed about this Treaty of Madras, and there is a clause in this Treaty of Madras, as I mentioned earlier, if a third power attacks these two powers, the Mysore or the English East India Company, they need to help each other. However, what happened during the time of Second War is that thus Mysore was attacked by Marathas. Based on the treaty, if Mysore was attacked by Marathas, the English East India Company should help them. However, English East India Company did not help the Mysore. So this created kind of anchor as far as Hyder Ali is concerned. And moreover, English East India Company also attacked the port of Mahi, which was a French port which is giving protection by Hyder Ali. So these two reasons finally led to the Second Anglo-Mysore War, which took place between 1780 to 84. Hyder Ali launched a massive attack against the English East India Company during the Second War. He fought against the East India Company powers in Carnatic region, and he inflicted a severe attack on the company in the Battle of Pollilur in 1780. However, Hyder Ali died in the year 1782 and the war was continued by his son Tipu Sultan. Tipu also fought fearlessly against the English East India Company and the war came to an end with the Treaty of Mangalore in the year 1784. So, this treaty is very historically significant. Why? Because based on the treaty, both the powers as happened in the context of the first Anglo-Mysore War, both these powers decided to restore the captured territories as well as the prisoners of war. Why this treaty is historically significant in the sense, this is the last treaty in Indian history where the English East India Company signed an agreement with equal terms on an Indian ruler. So here it was considered as a strategic success as far as Mysore and Tipu Sultan is concerned. However, it was also considered as a kind of British defeat. Now, we are moving on to our third Anglo-Mysore War. So, the third Anglo-Mysore War took place between 1790 to 1792. So, the immediate reason for the third Anglo-Mysore War was that Tipu Sultan attacked Travancore. We know that Travancore is an independent princely state in the present day of Kerala. Tipu attacked Travancore in the year 1789. So, why did English East India Company interfere in this context is that Travancore was one of the closest ally of the English East India Company and company considered the attack on Travancore by Tipu as an attack on themselves. Here we can see that company was actually looking for a reason to declare a war against Mysore and as well as Tipu Sultan. So, this was the immediate reason why the third Anglo-Mysore War took place. Moreover, company also had anxiety because Tipu is expanding his friendship with the French East India Company. These reasons finally culminated in the Third Anglo-Mysore War, which took place between 1790 to 1792. Even though in the beginning, Tipu could make some advancement, by the end of the war, Tipu could not control or Tipu could not maintain progress. Why this happened in the sense, in the context of Third Anglo-Mysore War, English East India Company made the Triple Alliance. Triple Alliance in the sense, company made friendship, company made negotiation with the Marathas as well as the Nizam of Hyderabad. So these three forces jointly attacked Tipu Sultan. East India Company, Nizam of Hyderabad as well as the Marathas. They jointly formed their collaborative army and attacked Tipu Sultan. That is why at the end of the war, Tipu could not maintain his progress or he suffered lots of setbacks. There was no other option in front of Tipu except make a peaceful agreement with the English East India Company. And that actually resulted in the Treaty of Sringapatnam of 1792. This treaty is very significant. Why? Because with this treaty, Tipu had to surrender almost nearly half of his territories to the English East India Company. And the territories of Tipu was divided between East India Company, the Marathas as well as the Nizam of Hyderabad. And moreover, Tipu had to give almost a huge amount of war indemnity, almost 3 crore rupees. And we can see here, 2 of the sons of Tipu were taken as a hostage by the English East India Company until he was paying this huge amount of war indemnity. So thus, the Third Anglo-Mysore War as well as the Treaty of Sringapatnam was considered as a setback as far as Tipu is concerned. Now, let's talk about the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. So, the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War took place in the year 1799. Even though Tipu faced lots of setbacks with the Third Anglo-Mysore War as well as the Treaty of Sringapatnam, he never gave up his fight against the English East India Company. He tried to reorganize the army, he tried to get help from the French East India Company, and he finally launched the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. This time, English East India Company made alliance with the Nizam of Hyderabad. The Marathas remained neutral this time. They neither supported the English East India Company nor supported the Tipu Sultan. This war also, Tipu faced setbacks. He was finally killed at Seringapatanam when he was trying to protect his capital, which is the Seringapatanam. So, with the death of Tipu, we can see the end of the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War, which also marked end of Mysore's independence. Now, what are the significance of Anglo-Mysore War? First, it marked the end of the major South Indian resistance, that is Mysore. So both Hyder Ali as well as Tipu Sultan got killed, and that actually marked their end of the South Indian resistance. We can see the British supremacy in Deccan as well as in South India. After the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War, English East India Company reinstated Vodayar dynasty in Mysore. So they became a kind of what we can say subsidiary power as far as the English East India Company is concerned, because Vodaya dynasty also signed in the subsidiary alliance by which they have to rule according to the wish, according to the interest, according to the decisions of English East India Company. We'll talk about the subsidiary alliance in our next class. However, the point is here is that Mysore's independence came to an end. We can see the end of Tipu's as well as Hyder Ali's fighting also with the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. So Tipu became a symbol of the anti-colonial resistance. Now, let's move on to our second case study, that is Marathas. There are three Anglo-Maratha Wars. Before discussing about these Anglo-Maratha Wars, let's try to understand the Marathas. So, Marathas are the most powerful Indian confederacy after Mughals. We mentioned this word confederacy, right? Confederacy in the state that they were controlled by a Peshwa. He was the nominal head of this confederacy. However, there were a number of other chieftain families such as Scindias, Holkars, Bonslays, Gaikwads, etc. So, it is a confederacy. Maratha is a confederacy. There is a nominal head. This head is called Peshwa. He is located in Pune and he was helped by a number of chiefs called Scindias, Holkars, Gaikwads, Bonslays, etc. One of the most important problems with this confederacy is that there were greater internal rivalries among these chiefs. So they prioritized their own political interest, their own power, rather than giving priority or rather than giving importance to the whole aim of the Maratha Confederacy. So these internal rivalries, the difference of opinion, etc. were exploited by the English East India Company, and which enabled company to establish their upper hand over the Maratha Confederacy. The cause of the Anglo-Maratha Wars. So the first cause of this war was succession dispute within Marathas. We are talking about the internal rivalries, disunity, difference of opinion among these different Maratha chiefs. So sometimes succession disputes emerged who will become the next Peshwa. So for that purpose, there were kind of disputes among these Scindias, Holkars, Bonslays, Gaikwads, etc. which deteriorated their unity, and the company was looking for an opportunity to interfere in their internal affairs. The second reason was that of the British policy of subsidiary alliance. So in the context of Mysore also, I mentioned this policy, subsidiary alliance. So the policy of subsidiary alliance was introduced by the English East India Company Governor General Wellesley. So based on this subsidiary alliance, if an Indian regional kingdom signed in the Treaty of Subsidiary Alliance, they had to keep the English army in their kingdom. And moreover, they also had to pay for this English army, and the most important thing is that they won't be able to take any independent decision as far as diplomatic issues are concerned. So everything is monitored by the English East India Company, which means here the regional kingdom, they are actually sacrificing their sovereignty to the English East India Company. So this British policy of subsidiary alliance also became a reason for the Anglo-Maratha War. I'll explain how this resulted in the Second Anglo-Maratha War. Now, another most important reason was the desire to control the western and central India by the English East India Company. So, Marathas, they had a vastly expensive territory. They collected two types of taxes, Chaud as well as Sardeshmugi from these different regions, which means they were economically rich. Here you can see that these chiefs controlled different territories. For example, Scindias in Gwalior, Holkars in Indore, Bonsles in Nagpur, Gaikwads in Baroda, and the Peshwa in Pune. So all these territories are under the control of the Maratha Confederacy. If you are looking at this map, you can see the length and breadth of the Maratha Confederacy. They collected tax from all these regions and they were economically super rich. So we have to ask this question, if Marathas are super rich, if they're having strong military, how did the English East India Company defeated or how did they establish their grip over Marathas? The answer lies in the internal rivalry or the weakness of these Maratha rulers. We can say that the English East India Company did not defeat the united Maratha Confederacy. In fact, they defeated the divided Maratha chieftains. So let's talk about the first Anglo-Maratha War, which took place between 1775 to 1782. So the most important reason for the first Anglo-Maratha War is dispute over Peshwa succession. We already mentioned that there were kind of fights and rivalries among these Maratha chiefs as far as the succession is concerned, who will become the next Peshwa. That was a very important question. What exactly happened in the context of the first Anglo-Maratha War is that in the year 1772, Peshwa Madhavarao died. After the death of Peshwa Madhavarao, there is a question who will become the next ruler. So, his younger brother Narayana Rao became the next Peshwa. So, in the year 1772, Peshwa Madhavarao died and his younger brother Narayana Rao came to power. However, in the year 1773, Narayana Rao got assassinated. So, again there is this question who will become the next Peshwa. So, his uncle Raghunath Rao claimed the throne of Peshwa. So here the sequence are like this. Madhavarao was the Peshwa. He died in the year 1772. His younger brother Narayana Rao became the Peshwa in the year 1772. However, he got assassinated in the year 1773. Then his uncle Raghunath Rao claimed the office of Peshwa. However, other Maratha chiefs wanted to make Narayana Rao's infant Madhavarao II as the next Peshwa under the guidance of Nana Fadnavis. What happened in this context is that Raghunath Rao sought help from the English East India Company. Company agreed to help Raghunath Rao. They were actually looking for an opportunity to interfere in the internal administration of Marathas. So, Raghunath Rao promised that once he'll become the Peshwa, he'll give some kind of territorial concession to the English East India Company. Here, all the Maratha chiefs, they united against Raghunath Rao and English East India Company. That finally culminated in the first Anglo-Maratha War. Since all the Maratha chiefs united together, they could easily defeat the English East India Company. So, the war finally came to an end by the Treaty of Salba in the year 1782. Based on this Treaty of Salbai, which took place in the year 1782, Madhavarao II became the Peshwa of Maratha Confederacy. And moreover, Raghunath Rao abandoned his claim of Peshwaship. He was given some kind of pension. So, what we can see is that Marathas retained their independence after the first Anglo-Maratha War, and the British English East India Company, they faced temporary setbacks. So here you can see that when the Marathas' power joined together, they could easily defeat the English East India Company. So that is what happened in the context of the first Anglo-Maratha War. Now let's talk about the second Anglo-Maratha War. Here also, English East India Company tried to interfere in the internal administration of the Marathas. What exactly happened in the sense, Peshwa Bajirao II He was defeated by Yashwantrao Holkar in the Battle of Pune in the year 1802. When Peshwa Bajirao II was defeated by this Yashwantrao Holkar, Bajirao directly approached the English East India Company. English East India Company, just like in the context of Raghunath Rao, offered help to Peshwa Bajirao II. However, they had one condition. The condition is like this, that Peshwa Bajirao II had to sign in the Treaty of Bassein. So, Treaty of Bassein is very much important. Why? Because based on the Treaty of Bassein, Peshwa Bajirao II agreed to join in the subsidiary alliance. We already made discussions on this subsidiary alliance. If a regional kingdom of India joined in the subsidiary alliance, they had to keep the British army in their territory. They had to pay money for or maintenance money for this English army. Most importantly, they won't be able to take any diplomatic decisions as far as the external affairs are concerned. So, since Peshwa Bajirao II agreed to join in the subsidiary alliance, it created anger among other Maratha chiefs because they considered it as a check for the sovereignty of the Marathas. So, this situation culminated or this situation led to the Second Anglo-Maratha War. Here, Scindias and Bhonsles are the chieftain families who participated in the Second Anglo-Maratha War against English East India Company. However, the British defeated Scindias and Bhonsles after the Battle of Assaye and Laswari. Now, British gained large territories such as like Gujarat, Bundelkhand. They also got territories in central India, Cuttack, etc. So, this was a success as far as the English East India Company is concerned. We are moving on to the context of the Third Anglo-Maratha War. So, this was the final conflict as far as these Anglo-Maratha Wars are concerned. Here, East India Company used Pindari issue as a kind of pretext for the Third Anglo-Mysore War. So, what is this Pindari issue? We need to ask, who are these Pindaris? Pindaris are irregular horsemen. They acted as mercenaries for the Maratha army. However, after a series of wars, these Pindaris gained independence. Now they became looters or plunderers. They were looting the money of the villagers, city people, traders, etc. So the English East India Company launched a campaign against the Pindaris. They wanted to suppress these Pindari people. And the company claimed that it is Marathas who are offering shelter to this Pindari population. So what we can see is that even though the declared aim was to suppress the Pindaris, the real agenda, the real motive of English East India Company was to suppress the existing power of the Maratha Confederacy. Peshwa Bajirao II, we already mentioned about him. He was the one who signed in this Treaty of Bassein, by which Maratha Confederacy became part of the subsidiary alliance. However, by this time he became growingly dissatisfied with the intervention or interference of English East India Company in his internal administration. So he became very dissatisfied and he fought against the English East India Company. However, Peshwa Bajirao II was defeated by the East India Company in this Third Anglo-Maratha War, and which actually resulted in the end of Maratha power. So that is the context of the Third Anglo-Maratha War. Now, if you are analyzing the results of this Anglo-Maratha War, we can see that British could establish their paramountcy, their power over India, especially in this Deccan region, South India, etc. It also marked the end of the Maratha Confederacy, and large parts of India, including north of India like the Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, as well as the Deccan, and now there is no Tipu Sultan, there is no Mysore power. So, this South India also comes under the control of the British paramountcy or British power. Now, our final case study is Punjab, the Sikh kingdom. So let's talk about the Sikh kingdom before moving to the Anglo-Sikh Wars. The Sikhs were united under Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Before Maharaja Ranjit Singh, they were divided into different Sikh army groups. Now, it was Maharaja Ranjit Singh, he united all these different Sikh confederacies and created Punjab or a greater Sikh kingdom. In the year 1779, he captured Lahore, and in the year 1801, he declared himself as the Maharaja of this Sikh kingdom. So, Sikhs had a stronger army. Even though Maharaja Ranjit Singh had a strong army, he never unnecessarily interfered in the administrative affairs of English East India Company. He tried to make kind of friendship or alliance with the East India Company. And based on that, they signed in the Treaty of Amritsar in the year 1809. Based on the Treaty of Amritsar, both English East India Company as well as Maharaja and its Sikh kingdom, both these parties or powers, they agreed River Satluj as the boundary of their Sikh kingdom. So Maharaja Ranjit Singh agreed that he won't cross the south of Satluj and won't enter into the territories of the English East India Company. English East India Company also promised the same thing. So we can see what we can say kind of alliance or a mutual agreement between this Maharaja Ranjit Singh as well as English East India Company is concerned. Because of this treaty, the company never interfered in this Sikh territories for nearly 4 decades. However, Maharaja Ranjit Singh died in the year 1839, and after that we can see the weakening condition of the Sikh Empire. If you are looking at this map, you can see the territories controlled by the Sikhs. It includes Peshawar, Lahore, Multan, etc. So they had a very strong, powerful empire. Now, let's look into the cause of the Anglo-Sikh Wars. So there are multiple reasons. The most important reason for this Anglo-Sikh War is that political instability caused after the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. He was a very talented ruler who could maintain his administration properly. He had strong hands over his army also. However, after his death, many rulers came to power and they were not in a position to maintain this strong empire. So the political instability after Ranjit Singh's death, weak successors, court intrigues, British fear of Sikh military power, expansionist policy of company, etc. resulted in a series of Anglo-Sikh wars. Let's talk about the first Anglo-Sikh War. So this war happened when this Sikh army tried to cross the river Satluj. So that actually culminated in the Anglo-Sikh Wars, first Anglo-Sikh War particularly. And there were a series of battles such as Battle of Mudki, Firozshah, Aliwal, Sabrown, etc. At the Battle of Sabrown, English East India Company finally defeated the Sikh army and they signed in the Treaty of Lahore. Based on the Treaty of Lahore, the English East India Company never immediately annexed Punjab or the Sikh Empire. Instead, they appointed a British resident in Punjab, which means indirectly they established their control over the Sikh kingdom. Now, let's talk about the Second Anglo-Sikh War, which took place between 1848 to 49. So, the immediate reason for this war is revolt in Multan. The revolt in Multan was happened and the governor of Multan, he resigned by himself. In order to control the situation, 2 European officials, English East India Company officials reached Multan. However, they were killed by the rebels. So that actually resulted in the Second Anglo-Sikh War. Now, during this fight, the Sikh resistance got crushed and there were number of battles like Battle of Ramnagar, Battle of Chilianwala, Battle of Gujarat, etc. All these battles were favorable for the English East India Company and the Sikh resistance was finally got crushed or they were defeated. So after the Second Anglo-Sikh War, Punjab got annexed by the English East India Company. Now Punjab became part of the East India Company's rule. So here you can see the various consequences of the Anglo-Sikh War. First thing, Punjab became the British province. It was directly annexed by the company. End of Sikh sovereignty, and there is also British could finally establish their control over the north-west frontier of India. So when we are going through these 3 case studies, we can see that Mysore got defeated, Marathas got defeated, and Sikhs also got defeated. Thereby, the company gradually established their power over the different parts of Indian subcontinent. So this is actually a picturization of the annexation of Punjab by the English East India Company. Now, let's have a recap. So here you can see the first case study, Mysore. It was a centralized state under Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, and they were completely defeated by the East India Company after the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War, and they reinstated Vodaya dynasty instead of this Tipu and Hyder Ali. Now, coming to the context of Marathas, it was a confederacy, which means, as I mentioned earlier, they had a nominal chief called Peshwa, and he was assisted by a number of chieftain families such as Scindias, Holkars, Gaekwads, etc. And after the Third Anglo-Maratha War, we can see the political fragmentation of the Maratha Confederacy. Now, in the context of Punjab, the Sikhs, it was a military kingdom, and Punjab finally got annexed by the East India Company. Now, let's have a look at the three important PYQs which was repeatedly asked for the UPSC prelims. So, here is the first question. With reference to Indian history, consider the following statements. The first statement is like this: the Nizam of Hyderabad was an ally of the British in the Third Anglo-Mysore War. Second statement: Tipu Sultan was killed in the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. Third statement: the Treaty of Seringapatam was signed after the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. See, we mentioned all these facts in our discussion on Anglo-Mysore War. So, you can easily identify that answer A is the right answer. Why? Because Nizam was an ally of the East India Company during the Third Anglo-Mysore War. Tipu was killed after Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. However, Treaty of Seringapatam was signed after the Third Anglo-Mysore War in the year 1792. That was not after the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War. So, that was the first question. Now, coming to the second question. With reference to Indian history, consider the following statements. So, this is a question which asked in the UPSC prelims of 2013. Now, the question is this: the Treaty of Bassein was signed between British and Holkar, British and Scindia, British and Peshwa Baji Rao II, British and Gaikwad. We repeatedly mentioned this thing. Answer is British and Peshwa Baji Rao II. That actually resulted in the Second Anglo-Maratha War. Now, coming to the third question, which is from UPSC prelims of 2017. So, the question is this: who among the following was the last ruler of the Sikh kingdom? So, we didn't mention this thing. The last Sikh ruler was Duleep Singh. So, it was during the reign of Duleep Singh that English India Company annexed the kingdom of Punjab. So, that is about our today's class. I hope that you got an overview regarding the British expansion as far as the different parts of Indian subcontinent is concerned. Let's see in our next class, and thank you so much.